Copy that. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, that totally sucked. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. How about one more time? Good afternoon, everyone. On a scale of 10, that was an 11. Thank you for that. I'm Reggie Hubbard. I'm Move On's congressional liaison, but you're not here to hear me. We're here to hear from one another. You know, and I'm tempted to say we got to stop meeting like this, but that's not true. We got to keep meeting like this. We got to keep meeting like this because this president is out of control. We got to keep meeting like this because we the people, if we don't speak truth to power, who will? If we the people do not speak truth to power, who will? Thank you. So we got to keep speaking truth to power. We got to keep organizing, and we got to keep demanding not only that Congress do its job, but that we, the peaceful majority, be seen and heard. We have a full program here today, and this is in conjunction with nearly 400 other events around the country. So without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, Mark Pocan.
Let's hear it for Reggie from Move On. Thank you for being here as we're about to have a historic vote over at the U.S. Capitol. But we're going to vote to say Congress has to be the body that decides whether or not we go to war, not a decision by a single person like Donald Trump. When it comes to the Middle East and to Iran, it's hard to trust someone who's been wrong as often on this issue as Donald Trump. Just look at his record. He tore up the nuclear deal with Iran, a measure that made the Middle East and the world safer from nuclear weapons. He promised an end to endless wars and to bring our troops home, but instead has deployed 15,000 more troops than were in the Middle East just 6 months ago. He made the most extreme decision, one rejected by both Democratic and Republican previous presidents, to assassinate Qasem Soleimani without the legally required advice and consent of Congress, all due to an imminent threat. Yet when we asked what that imminent threat was, we were told it was both imminent and a threat, and that is all we were told. And they cited the 2002 authorization to go into war that was devised when Saddam Hussein was here. There was no evidence, no explanation, just empty words from this administration to justify this reckless action. And even though yesterday the president showed a rare moment of self-restraint, with this administration that's been so built on lies, we have no confidence that the next time he touches his Twitter account, we don't once again jeopardize peace in this region. We have been in Iraq for 17 years too long, and we deserve an end to these endless wars. We want diplomacy, we want de-escalation, and we want peace. Nothing we've seen from this administration gives us any confidence that they know what they're doing. But we must do these three things. In the next hour, Congress will reassert our role over military action as required by Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and we will vote for the War Powers Act through a concurrent resolution. 2, we must support Ro Khanna's bill and Senator Sanders' bill to block funding for war with Iran. And 3, we must block my good friend Barbara Lee's long efforts to repeal the much abused 2002 AUMF. This is not the time for presidential amateur hour. Congress must be heard, and that message is no war with Iran.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephen Miles. I'm the executive director at Win Without War. I want to hear some noise. So when I say no, you say war. No. War. No. War. No. All right, we're going to get up here next, Congressman Andy Levin. He is a congressman from Michigan's 9th District. He's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee.
Wow, you are a beautiful sight and such a necessary sight. Was anybody out there with me when I was 20 years old and the Russians invaded Afghanistan and Jimmy Carter decided to react by rattling his saber and reinstating draft registration? Any other people out there fighting against that in 1980? Are you here? Come on, let me see you. Was anybody else? Well, I think I was organizing demonstrations in Bullis Park when I was at the AFL-CIO and I lived in Silver Spring. When George W. Bush lied to us and said there were weapons of mass destruction, did anybody hit the streets then to say we don't want war in Iraq? Here we are again, brothers and sisters. Here we are again. We are out there assassinating the top general of another country. I'm nobody. The idea that we're debating whether this was a good person or something, that's ridiculous. Iran is a country, a thousands of year old civilization, the 17th largest country, the 18th most populous country in this world. If someone went and killed the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff when he was in Brussels or Paris, would we say that was an act of war against the United States? Well, I have a simple message for Donald Trump. We have a little document called the Constitution of the United States, and it says only the Congress may declare war against another country, and at least some of us are out here with you saying, we are not ready to go to war. If you want to go to war with Iran, you've got to come to us. You have to have a debate of the American people, and we are not going to roll over for you and have another endless war in the Middle East. Get ready to march, because we're going to march until we win. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Levin. How many of y'all were on our phone call last night? We had tens of thousands of people online and on the phone, and one of the key speakers on that call, we're lucky to have her again here tonight. It has been said that Barbara Lee speaks for me. She's going to speak to us here right now, Congresswoman Barbara Lee.
Thank you very much, and let me just thank you so much for once again staying woke, as we say, in my congressional district. I want to say thank you also for demanding no war with Iran. Now make no mistake, and I know you know this, that Donald Trump is responsible for this crisis. He has shunned diplomacy since day one. He has put warmongers at the helm of all of his cabinet, all of his agencies. Congress must act really right now to put a check on Trump. The cycle of violence and endless war must end. It must end. Now, the 2001 authorization to use military force, you know I had to vote against that because it was a blank check. It was a blank check. And also the 2002 Iraq AUMF. That also was a blank check. The American people do not want unnecessary and catastrophic wars of choice in the Middle East or anywhere throughout the world. And let me be clear, Trump's dangerous and his reckless actions have brought us to the brink now of an all-out war with Iran. So let's say again, no war with Iran. No war with Iran. Congress must exercise its constitutional duty to stop these endless wars. We are currently debating a war powers resolution to prevent Trump's further escalation with Iran. But you know what? We must do more. We must pass, as our co-chair mentioned earlier, my bill to repeal the 2001 and 2002 AUMFs. We must repeal those to end these overly broad and outdated authorizations and prevent presidents from going to war without congressional approval. And you know there's no military solution in the Middle East. And you know that the path to peace is not war. And you know that the Iraq 2002 authorization to use force was presented to Congress based on lies that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We knew then, you knew then, that we should not have passed that. But the Congress did. And now what in the world are they doing? Conducting assassinations and military actions in Iran. Excuse me, in Iraq against Iran. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. And so I just want to thank you all again because you are being vigilant, you're continuing to stay woke, and you're making sure that these resolutions, these war power resolutions, the repeal of the 2001 and 2002 authorizations have the votes that are necessary to pass because you are the ones who are making democracy real and making this Constitution finally work as it relates to matters of war and peace. So thank you again. Good to see everybody and stay woke.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Congresswoman. We have a number of members of Congress who are here, and they're going to be voting very shortly, so we want to cycle through them. But I just want to say that we're here today as part of one of over 370 events happening all around this country, thanks to a number of partners, over 34 organizations, including core partners, my organization, Win Without War, Move On, Indivisible, About Face, and NIAC Action. We just heard from one of the great voices and powerful voices in Congress for peace. She's been here for a really long time. I want to introduce next a very new member of Congress who has quickly become one of the most powerful voices for peace. I'm very honored to introduce Congresswoman Ilhan Omar.
Well, I just want to start out by thanking you all for collectively gathering to preserve our humanity. Mankind must put an end to war, or war will put an end to mankind. Those were the words of President John F. Kennedy to the United Nations in 1961. It is because of the grave risks of war that our founders made it very difficult to engage in warfare. It is part of the spirit of our Constitution to mitigate the ability of one individual to create wars. They wanted to make it very hard. They wanted to make sure there was deliberation, debate, conversations. They wanted this to take place. This is why only Congress has the power to declare war. And today, the House will exercise our constitutional guaranteed power to say loudly and clearly, no war with Iran. I am proud to introduce the first war powers resolution in the House of Representatives as soon as this attack took place. Because we know that when it comes to matters of war and peace, we should not wait to speak when it's politically convenient. We speak when it's right. Because I believe that is what leadership looks like. To me, war is not an abstract concept. I know what the toll of war looks like. If I do not speak up for the child who's going to be displaced because of conflict, who will? If I do not speak up for the millions who will be forced to flee their homes if we start another reckless war, with Iran, who else will? The trauma of war is not only felt by soldiers in the battlefield, it is felt by the children who are huddled under beds as bombs go off outside their windows. If we are only focused on killing monsters of the world, we can forget the children, the elderly, the people with disabilities who are going to be caught in the crossfire, who are unable to sleep, unable to make a decision, who, if they survive, become the walking dead like myself. That trauma that's inflicted on them never leaves them. Engaging in armed conflict never creates real stability. It only costs lives and steals futures. It doesn't create prosperity. It doesn't make it easy for people to sleep at night. Time and time again, aggression has led to more aggression. We will not defeat aggression with aggression. We will defeat it by creating a culture of diplomacy and cooperation. So my final reminder to you is the battle to saying no war with Iran doesn't begin or end today. Once we take this vote, we know that this president is probably going to veto it. And we know we are going to find ourselves again at the prick of war. It is going to be up to us to stay engaged and sustain this fight to make sure that our world is more peaceful than it is today. Thank you.
Thank you, Congresswoman Omar. So not only do we have members of the House here, we have Jeff Merkley from Oregon here to give his remarks on the situation.
Well, from those of us in the Senate, a huge thank you to the House of Representatives for standing up against war with Iran. At this moment, as we're on this brink of another major conflict, we should reflect for a moment on mistakes that we have made. An effort to occupy and nation build in Afghanistan, thousands of deaths, tens of thousands of injuries at over $1 trillion. How about we not make a mistake in Iran the way we made a mistake in Afghanistan? And we should think about the situation in Iraq, where false intelligence led to Congress approving going to war, only to find out we'd been lied to by our own government. And again, thousands of deaths of American sons and daughters, tens of thousands of injuries, $1 trillion. How about we not make the mistake in Iran that we made in Iraq? I think about how this administration, with its cycle of provocative acts and escalation, has damaged virtually every objective we've had in the Middle East. It's placed at greater risk our citizens, our service members, our assets in the region. It has turned demonstrations in Iran against the government into demonstrations against the United States of America. It has turned demonstrations in Iraq against influence from Iran into demonstrations against the United States of America. It's led to the parliament of Iraq voting to send us out of the country. It has resulted in a shutdown of the training for ISIS. It's resulted in every objective being overturned. How about this? No war with Iran. Not now, not next week, not next month, not next year, not during this presidency, not during the next presidency. No war with Iran. Thank you. We've got House members en route to a vote. We want to get them up here. Thank you for coming out on this cold day and being in this fight. Today, can you come back when the Senate's voting about 10 days from now to protest and make it clear? Thank you and God bless.
We're going to have up next another powerful voice for peace, Congressman Earl Blumenauer from the great state of Oregon.
I can't thank you enough for being here this afternoon. We've got a reckless reality show president who is continuing a sorry state of affairs for the United States, misplaying our relationship with Iran. We have problems with this country, but they are rooted in the fact that the United States in 1953 helped overthrow a popularly elected president of Iran, Mossadegh, and installed the repressive regime of the Shah. It's no wonder that we've had problems there, that people don't trust us. What the wonder is that so many Iranian people have warm feelings towards the United States. But this idiot, with this assassination, turned an era where we saw people at great risk to themselves demonstrating against this repressive regime, and he's united them against us, perhaps sending back true reform, not just years. I have friends from Iran who say it may be decades. But your voice and 370 meetings across the country are providing the pushback. The American public does not want war with Iran. This guy has no clue, no plan, but make no mistake, he's dangerous. This is part of his approach to politics and maximum confusion. We're not going to let him get away with it. We're going to be firm against the recklessness. We're going to be strong in support of people who are going to stand for peace in this election so that we can have a new beginning in 2021, and in the meantime, prevent him from dragging us into another war. Thank you very much.
Our next member of Congress, progressive champion from Illinois, Jan Schakowsky.
It was a much warmer day than this last May when I stood with Barbara Lee and a number of members of the Progressive Caucus, and we announced the No War with Iran Caucus. And sadly, we are here today when this reckless president, not asking any authority, not asking any advisors who knew what they were doing, to decide to take out one person. Soleimani, General Soleimani, is not like Osama bin Laden or another terrorist. This is like the second most powerful person in Iran, and he was rejected to take him out by two presidents, Republican and Democrat, George W. Bush and Barack Obama, knowing the kind of, not that he is someone that we need to mourn, but someone who has enormous power to be the match that lights the fire of war in Iran and in Iraq. So that is what we're facing right now, this reckless president. And that is why finally, belatedly, the United States Congress, the House of Representatives shortly will vote to express our power, to exert our authority, finally, over the question of war and peace. And let this be the beginning of the time when only Congress will be able to make that decision. The people will decide. The people will decide. Now, you may remember just a couple of days ago that remarkably, following the time when the Iranian airstrike on our personnel was launched, the president tweeted, "All is well." All is well. Imagine that. Well, Mr. President, all is not well. We know that Iran has now announced its withdrawal from the nuclear agreement and will resume the nuclear weapons program, that the most remarkable example of diplomacy in modern history had created the Iran deal that was negotiated in 2015. And we know now that the United States has been forced to suspend the fight against ISIS. And the Iraqis are likely to expel us from their country, where we have spent trillions of dollars in a war that all of you knew was the wrong war. All of you knew that. Our European allies like and countries like Israel are angry because they got no advance notice and were not alerted to this attack. And our action has united the people of Iran, who just a few short weeks ago were actually protesting their government, and now they are all protesting us. And the Iranian proxies like Hezbollah are still poised to attack. No, Mr. President, all is not well. But the people have your number. You are out here today because you know that we must demand that the Congress and that the voice of the people are heard. No more war. Mr. President, you did not make our country safer. You put us in much greater danger, and it is only us, you and us, that are going to get us out of it. No more war. Thank you.
No more war. No more war. No more war. Our next speaker is a congressman who comes from the great state of Massachusetts, great Commonwealth, I should say, apologies. And he is a congressman who has been fighting to make sure that no more war is not just something that we chant, but something that becomes the actions of the United States Congress and the law of the land. So without further ado, let me introduce Congressman Jim McGovern.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for being here today. The American people are sick and tired of endless wars. But you know what else they're sick of? They're sick of politicians like Donald Trump talking tough about war when his kids aren't the ones who are shipping out to the Middle East. It doesn't take any courage at all for Trump to threaten to go to war. It won't affect his family one bit. Shame on him. And shame on everyone in his administration who has been itching for war with Iran from day one. Make no mistake, the world is less safe because of Trump's reckless actions. Hardliners are emboldened. Iran is united against us. 4,000 more U.S. troops have deployed to the Persian Gulf. Operations against ISIS have been suspended, and Soleimani has already been replaced. So we are here today to say to President Trump, we will not let you and your reckless policies drag us into another conflict in the Middle East. The president claims his actions prevented an imminent threat, but we've heard that one before. We remember the stories about weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. We remember the tens of thousands of American soldiers who paid the price for that deception. We love this country. We love this country. And we are patriotic, and we do not want to see our troops put into the line of fire and innocent civilians killed because of this president's miscalculations. Now, maybe Trump thinks if he drags us into war, Americans will rally behind him. Maybe he thinks war will distract us from his scandal-plagued administration or his impeachment. Maybe he's in so far over his head, he doesn't know what to think. But Trump thinks he doesn't need congressional approval to go to war with Iran. But I have news for him. Oh, yes, he does. Donald Trump is not a dictator, although he probably wishes he was one. He is not a king. If he wants to go to war so bad, he has to come before the Congress of the United States and get approval. We represent the people who he is sending to the Persian Gulf right now. We represent their families who are scared sick. And we are going to stand up and demand an end to his dangerous brinkmanship. That's why this afternoon, as chairman of the House Rules Committee, I proudly brought a war powers resolution to the House floor to prevent him from going to war with Iran. The president is about to get a loud and clear message from this Congress probably in the next 10 minutes. We are not going to roll over. We are going to reassert our authority on issues of war and peace, and America is not going to war with Iran. Thank you very much.
No more war! No more war! No more war! No more war! One more. No more war! And scene. Thank you. Since this is a rally for justice, let's have another chant, shall we? Okay. When I say people, you say power. Okay. When I say people, you say power. People! People! When I say people, you say power. People! People! When I say people, you say power. People! People! All right. Thank y'all for that. I feel a little more at home. And it's cold. We had to get some heat out in here, right? Speaking of heat, it is my honor to introduce the co-chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, my dear friend Pramila Jayapal.
Nobody brings that heat better than Reggie. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Listen, I just came from speaking on the floor, and I was thinking about the fact that 17 years next month will be 17 years from when I was out organizing 50,000 people, the largest anti-war march we had had in Seattle, against the war in Iraq, against that failed war in Iraq. Remember that war? Remember when we were promised that somehow there were weapons of mass destruction, but we all knew that was not true. We all knew that. We all knew that. But there was this push to go to war. There was a push to acknowledge, to not acknowledge the reality of what war is. War is devastating. It is devastating. Hundreds of thousands of people just in the Iran and Iraq war who lose their lives. Children, mothers, families separated, refugees created, devastation created, not just in this generation, but in generations to come. Humanity denied. That is what we're talking about with war. And that is why the framers gave that power to debate and to approve and to authorize war only to this body, the United States Congress, not to some president who doesn't even know what it means to fight for a country, who doesn't know what it means to stand up for anything except his own ego. And let's just be very clear that this president has not respected the Constitution or the balance of power since he came into office. Remember that I word? That's sort of what's at the center of impeachment. That is why the House impeached the President of the United States, because he does not recognize the Constitution. And so, as we are here on the brink of this moment, the only thing that has saved the country in these moments has been the power of the people. So when Reggie does that chant, what that chant is about is Vietnam, people in the streets who brought our troops home from Vietnam. Iraq, people in the streets. We weren't able to stop that war, but it was people in the streets that brought the tension and the attention, which is required to organize. And today, what you are doing right here is bringing that same tension and attention to say we cannot go to war with Iran. And if we think about this really clearly, we know war is devastating. We also know that what this president has done with his reckless military brinksmanship is he has actually destroyed people's movements in Iraq that have been fighting against Iran, trying to push Iran back out of Iraq, trying to take power back for the people. And now we've left them alone. So the urgency of the moment that we're in is so deep and so grave. And your presence here and thousands of people, tens of thousands of people across this country who are in the streets is what ultimately saves us. It is that power of the people. And so because I miss my organizing roots out in the streets, I'm going to do a chant because Reggie told me I could. And so I'm going to say no war, and you're going to say with Iran. Ready? No war! No war! No war! Thank you guys so much, and let's keep it up. We got a lot of pressure to maintain.
We're going to hear from another speaker in just a moment, but before we do, let's keep that chant going. We did this before. When I say no, you say war, but we're going to add something. When I say yes, you say peace, okay? So no! War. Yes! Peace. No! War. Yes! Peace. No! War. Yes! Peace. All right, next up we have a great speaker. We have the wonderful Congresswoman from the great state of Michigan, Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib.
You know, I one day will see an America that leads with compassion. And I know that because I look at all of you and I know there's more of us that are for peace and not war than there are that are for violence and death. I want an America that chooses humanity over war and death, for politics and profit. We need a country that chooses peace for generations to come. President Trump's rogue and unconstitutional act has led to instability globally. Just as the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have been disastrous, resulting in deaths of millions of people, costing trillions of dollars, or war with Iran would destabilize the region even more and cause unknown human suffering. The will of the American people must be heard. And we say no to war with Iran. From day one, this president has antagonized Iran, tearing up successful nuclear deal, imposing crippling unilateral sanctions. Trump takes advice from warmongers, people, obsessed with regime changes, despite long and bloody American track record of failed regimes changes across the globe. We live in a country where endless war has been normalized. When we have demanded a college education or health care that doesn't bankrupt us, but the establishment asks, how much money will it cost to pay for those things? But we throw billions of dollars away, and you all know this. We feel it every day for broken weapon systems. We spend trillions of dollars sending our armed forces to die in rich people's wars. But when we demand basic dignity and opportunity to thrive, that's when the establishment starts pretending to care about deficits and debt. We're awake to this game. We're not going to play anymore. We must dismantle our war economy and reinvest in the people's economy. Today's vote on the War Powers Resolution is a great first step towards reining in the war machine. But we must go further. It must be driven by people movement like this. We need to pass Barbara Lee's bill to repeal the 2002 authorization of military force. We need to pass Ro Khanna's bill to prohibit military spending on a war with Iran. We must keep up the pressure and keep up the fight. We cannot do this. We cannot stop this march to war without all of you. And again, there are more of us, humanists, real people, because when we come together against death, against violence, against war, we don't come as Republicans or Democrats or independents. We come as real people, human beings that understand what this suffering means to individuals, to generations after us. So I thank you so much for your courage to stand up and say no more lies, no more for-profit wars, no more making decisions without us at the table saying yes or no. And we are saying no right now today. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Congresswoman Tlaib. Okay, let's do this again. When I say people, you say power. People. Power. People. Power. When I say people, you say power. People. Power. People. Ah, God, I love that. Cool. All right, back to peace. Our next speaker, I had the privilege of hearing him last week on an interfaith clergy call at the DNC. And he framed our current moment as our better angels versus our deepest demons. And that stuck with me, because that's where we're at, you know. And the one thing, I'll take this one step further, since I grew up in the Baptist church, angels don't show up until we call them. So we need to call our better angels. We need to call this peace. We need to call this world that we hope to see. It ain't going to just happen. We got to call it. We got to speak it into existence. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Reverend Jim Wallace, President of Sojourners, to the stage.
Let me start with this. Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God." Now let me be clear. You can't follow Jesus' instructions and follow Donald Trump to go to war in Iran. There's a choice. Follow Jesus or follow Trump. It's a clear choice. I am glad for the organizers calling us together around the country, 375 gatherings, and you here in the cold. We are going to show this country that we, people of faith, every faith, and no faith at all, are unified to stop the war in Iran. But we are not just called to be peace lovers. We're called to be peacemakers. It's going to take a lot of work, commitment, and sacrifice on our side. We are glad that instead of more confrontation, there was a moment of no more escalation, but that will not continue. Let us get ready. Let us be prepared. Yesterday morning, I was with a group of faith leaders in Tijuana on the border. We were watching the president speak. We were making plans already for a broad, unified, passionate call for peace from faith leaders all over the world. We were getting ready, and Mr. President, we are ready. This is a time to put our words into action. This is a time to say what we believe and do what we say. As the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said a long time ago, the church is not meant to be the master of the state or the servant of the state, but the conscience of the state. And they will see that again if they increase this escalation. There will be no support except from a few of, let me say, Donald Trump's evangelical chaplains who'd never speak, if you notice, the words of Jesus. We'll speak those words back to them. And all over the country, no matter who we are, we will show, like today, that in fact we will be unified and we will stand, because you can't follow our faith traditions. There is no justification or measure or values that would support a war with Iran, period. So as we would say in our tradition, no war with Iran, amen. Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen? Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. I know it's getting cold out there, but if you could all stand up here and see the beautiful faces out there. Every one of us is out here tonight because we know the fires of war are raging all around the world right now, and we need to make sure that we do not set another one of those fires. So one more time, when I say no, you say war. No! War! No! War! No! War! We're going to have next up Congressman Mark Takano from the great state of California, the 44th 41st District. Thank you. I'm going to be very brief because I've got to get to a reception to celebrate the recent wedding of Representative Barbara Lee. Barbara Lee is a true hero to me. I remember that one voice back in the early 2000s. I was, I think, in Europe at the time and feeling so frustrated and angry that my government was on a steamroller, riding a steamroller into a war in Iraq. It didn't make any sense to me then. I was confused by, remember Tony Blair muddying the water, and we thought, well, Tony Blair must be blessing it. There must be something there. I can tell you, I have no doubt in this case with President Trump and his recent action that there is no there. There is no there. I am heartened. You give me hope, and the people across this country who are organizing and turning out in weather that is cold and weather that might be hot, wherever they are organizing across this country, it's an important statement that you're making, that you are turning out and telling your government, no war with Iran. No war with Iran. No war with Iran. Allow me to go and join my good friend Barbara Lee in celebrating what I thought was a great auspicious beginning to the year. And what a turnabout that we have this challenge. We are going to do this together. We are going to build the public sentiment, and we are going to stop this war. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Takano, and thank you for all of you for still hanging in there. How we feeling out there? That was so much better than the beginning. Thank you for that. I'll leave it at that. I'd like to welcome to the stage now not only my colleague and dear friend, but actually my boss, Rana Epdig, the Executive Director of Move On.
Oh, good evening, everybody. I am so humbled to see all these faces out here tonight. And I know there are thousands more people out in the streets all over this country, over 350 actions today to show that there is an anti-war majority in this country that stands against the march to war. I'm here representing millions of Move On members who stood steadfast against the Iraq War, who worked tirelessly to ensure the Iran nuclear deal was put in place, and who continue to be committed to fight just as hard to ensure we do not get into an unnecessary and deadly war of choice in the Middle East. And I'm heartened to be here with all of you because your presence is evidence of this undeniable anti-war majority. I'm also here as a proud Iranian American. I was born and raised in California. My mother and my family immigrated here in the 70s and 80s from Iran. I have family here in the United States. This is my home. And I have family in Iran. And my family loves this country. We love this country. And we love the people in this country. And we love the people of Iran. And so when we're talking about going to war, we're talking about, or this president is asking us to go to war with our own family. So whether it's Iran or another country on this planet, this is personal. War is personal. And it has never been in the interests of civilians. It's destroyed civilizations. It's torn families apart. It's created trauma for generations, and it's wrecked our planet. It is the ugliest, most profane reality of human existence. And our president is playing with fire. We don't want and we do not need another war, period. No more war. No more war. No more war. No more war. And let me just say, the Trump administration is well aware that the vast majority of Americans in this country are against a march to war. They, along with Republicans in Congress, Fox News, and others, they're spreading lies and false accusations about those of us who are organizing for peace and speaking out to prevent a march to war. They're saying we're siding with the terrorists. We're allegiant with another regime. This is absolutely horrific. How dare they question our loyalty? We love this country. And while they're doing this, they're ratcheting up their rhetoric and using coordinated talking points to make the case for regime change and doing all they can to convince you to support the war eventually. Be vigilant. We've seen this before. The result was a disastrous and deadly war in Iraq, sold to the American public based on lies, many of the same lies they are spouting today. We must be vigilant. We must stand together. And most of all, hang together, show up together, everywhere, always. Thank you.
You know, over the last few days, I think I have spoken to Rana every minute of the day. And I have to say, as somebody who has been a Move On member long enough to remember what I was moving on from, I am so grateful for their leadership, and I am so grateful for Rana's fantastic leadership as their new executive director. Next up, I want to invite another good friend of mine. Jamal Abdi is the president of the National Iranian American Council. NIAC is the largest Iranian American grassroots organization. They have been leaders fighting for diplomacy with Iran. They have been leaders fighting against a war with Iran, and their leadership is desperately needed in this moment.
Hello, everybody. We are being tested. It is cold out here. Whew. Hey, how many times can we impeach this motherfucker? Hey, I think we would have a lot more people out here if Americans were not breathing a sigh of relief that we're not in the middle of a full-blown war quite yet. But let me tell you what, we are not out of the woods yet. Ain't a damn thing changed with this administration. All the circumstances that led to this situation are still in place. We're still violating the nuclear deal that started this problem. We are still imposing maximum pressure sanctions on innocent Iranians. We are, in the words of Mike Pompeo, taking food out of the mouths of Iranians and denying medicine to Iranian children. We still have a Muslim ban, a travel ban that bans my family members from Iran from coming to this country. Just like that repressive government bans me from coming to that country. I don't know which regime is worse sometimes. Let me tell you what, we have to do more than stop a war. We have to get back on the diplomatic track. And if this president's not going to do it, we got to find somebody who will. We cannot give up. This has to be the beginning, not the end of this anti-war movement. We still have 11 months of this guy, all right? And if we relent, if we don't fight, maybe less. I hear people groaning. But if this is not the beginning, if we give up, if we relent, this is going to continue. You think Mike Pompeo's done? You think Donald Trump's ego is stoked? You think he feels like a real man yet? No. He's going to keep on doing this. So thank you for being out here tonight. Thank you for mobilizing and organizing. Thank you to all the organizations doing this. We got to fight. No more sanctions. No more wars. Let's get back to diplomacy. Thank you, everybody.
I thought I was the only one bringing the fire. What's up, Jamal? Right, Jamal. Right. So we've heard from voices of Iranian Americans. Let's hear from some veteran voices, right? I'd like to welcome to the stage Claude Copeland, activist from About Face, Veterans Against the War.
Peace, everyone.
Can I say that again? Peace, everyone. Peace. Thank you. You know, it's wild just to think that we're out here now. You know, a lot of what folks shared, unfortunately, our government with the authorization to use military force has a very wide berth on how that force can be used. You know, it just makes me think in 2003 when I was in Germany, just watching on the news how quickly we just moved into war with Iraq. It felt literally in less than a week that happened. And hearing the news that happened with the death of General Somni just reminded me of the same scenario almost. You know, and yeah, this wasn't a place I want to be, and I'm sure we don't want to be. And I'm thankful to move on and to the National Iranian American Council to inviting us because we want to at least be able to lift up as folks who have been part of oppressing other people, especially as a person of color, that we don't want to see any of that happen again to anyone. And I mean, just for the fact that we have a government that's calling another government a terrorist organization is already trying to set us up for danger. And, you know, and that's why people really have to be careful and look, you know, who we're listening to and what are their motivations. You know, one of the campaigns we had, Drop the Military Industrial Complex, that we need that to just drop. Because the military is not looking out for our safety and definitely not looking for peace for us. You know, they're looking for profit. They're motivated by racist ideals, and that's not working for us. And unfortunately, the person at the top is looking at the same thing. You know, so we definitely are calling for looking at how people can come now together to see the AUMF be removed, and also how you can take part in local ways to calling for no war in Iran. So can we say that together? No war in Iran? No war in Iran! I can't hear you. Where? No war in Iran! What do we want? No war in Iran! Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I know it's cold out here, but we are getting close to the end. So thank you for bearing with us. Thank you for coming out and making your voices heard. As you've heard throughout the day, there are over 370 events going on all around the country. And one thing is common throughout a lot of them. There are voices of veterans. There are voices of military families, because they are ones who will bear massive costs in this. We've heard from folks on the ground in the region. They will bear massive costs from this. The human suffering of these conflicts is massive, and it needs to end. In a moment, the House is about to begin voting. They are voting in that building right behind us. And for too long, for far too long, they have not done this basic act of voting about whether or not to go to war. They have been happy to send young men and women off to fight and die in these wars. They have been happy to see these wars kill countless numbers of men and women around the world, but they have been too cowardly to do their own jobs and vote and decide and debate whether or not we go to these wars. That right now is changing. It's changing because of you, and it's never going to be the same again. So thank you all. Next up, I want to introduce my good friend, Jeremy Ben-Ami. He is the president of J Street, and they have been, throughout the past several years, one of the organizations fighting constantly for diplomacy, fighting constantly for peace in the Middle East. And I'd like to invite him up to the stage now.
Thanks so much, Steve. It is so great for J Street to be here as part of this incredible coalition. We've been really proud to work with Move On, with NIAC, with so many of the other groups, Win Without War, as we have tried to ensure that this country does not face another reckless, endless war. There is no solution militarily to the problems that we face in the Middle East. We must return to the path of diplomacy. There must be no war with Iran, and I stand here today to represent the majority of the American Jewish community that shares that view. The majority of American Jews were against the war with Iraq. The majority of American Jews want to see diplomacy to solve the problems in the Middle East. And the majority of American Jews are against this war that Donald Trump is starting with Iran. We were proud to be part of a coalition that supported the Iran nuclear agreement. We limited the ability of a country to produce nuclear weapons. That must be all of our goals, is to end nuclear proliferation. But what starts Iran down the path again towards developing a nuclear program? Donald Trump pulling out of the JCPOA. That is not the path to peace. That is not the path to non-proliferation. That is not the path of diplomacy. We say no to war, yes to peace, yes to diplomacy. Thank you very, very much for being here today.
So I want to thank you for your no war with Iran. Like Iran, not Iran, Iran. Y'all feel me? Right. Iran, not Iran. Let's stop that, please. No, real talk. So this vigilance that you are demonstrating now, this is the same vigilance that we need to have in the streets, right? So we may be a little cold. We only got 2 speakers, but remain vigilant. I'd like to welcome to the stage now Bakr Mahi Aldin, activist from the Iraqi American Community Transformation.
Good evening, everyone. Today I will share my thoughts as an Iraqi. Mr. President, since my birth in this continent, I've lived through countless administrations spewing lies on Iraq for alleged political gains, which have brought to Iraq nothing but ravage and death. Starting with the American-imposed Iran-Iraq war, which claimed a million innocent lives between both nations, to President Howard Walker Bush exhorting the Iraqis to rebel against Saddam Hussein by supporting them, and then allowing Saddam to crush the popular uprisings, which took thousands of lives, to President Clinton's deadly sanctions against the innocent Iraqis for years during the 90s, to President George W. Bush's 2003 war, right, followed by President Obama's accidental fire on Iraqis as they were battling ISIS. Millions upon millions of innocent Iraqi lives have been taken by American lies. Mr. President, we don't need your help in Iraq. Our populations lived in peace for centuries as Arabs and not. As Muslims, Jews, and Christians, populations knew how to coexist until the United States started to install Western puppets to lead our nations. Mr. President, I plead to you, hands off Iraq, hands off Iran. We don't need more death. No war with Iran. No war with Iran. No war with Iran. As Iraqis, we know firsthand what ruthless American sanctions do to a population. I remember as a kid, we used to come protest right over here. We used to hold signs, and I still have the memory of it in my head, that every 19 seconds, an infant in Iraq died to a common illness like the flu due to the sanctions. Sanctions aren't helping to overthrow Iran's government, but they are torturing the innocent Iranian populations. Mr. President, stop the sanctions, lift the sanctions. Sanctions are acts of war, and no war with Iran. No war with Iran. No war with Iran. We talked about the past, now it's time to speak about the future. Iran is our neighbor and our friend. A good future for Iraq is an Iraq that hosts all its neighbors in peace. A good future for Iraq is an independent Iraq that welcomes tourists and business people from the United States and Europe. A good future for Iraq does not include an Iraq that hosts wars between the United States and Iran or others. Mr. President, no war with Iran. No war with Iran. Whenever I speak with my cousins in Iraq, I always let them know that America is not the government, nor is it Hollywood. It's all these beautiful faces of peace over here. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Move on. You guys have a good night.
Thank you, Bakr. That was powerful. Before we go any further, we wanted to take a moment because earlier this week, there was a plane crash in Iran. We don't fully know the circumstances yet. There are lots of reports out there. What we do know is that a lot of people lost their lives, and we wanted to take a moment to just remember them, pray for them, and have a moment of silence. Thank you. Before I bring up our last speaker, we wanted to take a moment to once more do a chant that we did earlier. When I say no, you say war. When I say yes, we say peace. We want to do this as our last chant because we are out here today to say no war, but we are also out here to say yes to peace. We are not just here to talk about what we are against. We are not just here to talk about the world we don't want to see, but we want to talk about the world that we do want to see. Earlier today, I had the chance to be with Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who you heard from earlier. She said that we need to not just remember that we are not just fighting for peace, but we are fighting for justice. We know that without justice, there is no peace. Without peace, there is no justice. And so when I say no, you say war. And when I say yes, you say peace. No. War. Yes. Peace. No. War. Yes. Peace. No. War. Yes. Peace. Thank you. Next up, I want to invite our last speaker. She's going to be really long so that it's really cold. But I am very deeply honored to invite up Leah Greenberg, the co-executive director of Indivisible. Before I invite her up, I just want to say very quickly that Leah had the misfortune of working in the halls of Congress here and knows well how this place works. But in the hours after the election of Donald Trump, Leah and her partner and others got together and they said, now is the time to fight back. Now is the time to come together. Now is the time to begin the resistance. And so I am honored to invite up to the stage Leah Greenberg from Indivisible.
Hi, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you tonight. I want to start by recognizing that I'm from Indivisible, and also the good folks behind me with much stronger arms than I have are also with Herndon Reston Indivisible. And we're all here today because the administration has brought us to the brink of war. But that didn't start last week. It started on the first day that Donald Trump came into office, determined to antagonize Iran. He pulled together a team of long discredited warmongers, the same people who got us into Iraq, the same people who have never admitted what a catastrophic mistake that was. He withdrew from the successful multilateral Iran nuclear deal, a deal that was working. He unilaterally imposed crushing sanctions on Iran. He threatened sanctions against our European allies, engaged in economic warfare. He's done everything he can to ratchet up regional tensions. And now, with the decision to assassinate Soleimani, he has brought us to the brink of war. A war that, like Iraq in 2003, would be catastrophic, senseless, brutal, devastating for the entire region, for the U.S., for Iran, for the entire Middle East. It would cause human suffering on a scale we cannot begin to grasp. Now let me ask you, do you want war? No! Do the American people want war? No! Do the Iranian people want war? No! Does the world want war? No! No, that's right. No one but a few old, rich, white men and the defense industry want war. And now, we need to make sure that our leaders hear that loud and clear. We have to be the voices for peace that are missing at the highest levels of our government. And we need to demand that Congress exercise its constitutional responsibilities, rein in this out-of-control, belligerent clown show of an administration. We need de-escalation, we need oversight, we need peace. We know we can't trust Trump, so it's time for us to step up. And lots of things are complicated, but our message is very, very simple. Our message is no war with Iran. What's our message? No war with Iran. No war with Iran. And to echo Stephen, what do we actually want? Peace. That's right. Have a good night.
Brothers and sisters, we have made it to the end of the program. So I want you to take several things with you. We have plenty of no war with Iran, not Iran, Iran signs on this table. So please take those with you. We have no war with Iran buttons on the table. But also, the last thing I want you to take is hope. Take hope with you as you leave this place. These may seem like dark days, but you know what comes after darkness? Light. So let's be the light in the world. Thank you. And as we break down, the Resistance Company will sing some songs for us, but thank you for coming.
We're done, right? I don't know. The Zoom call dropped, so I haven't been on it for a few minutes now. He sent another one, but it was like literally right as I said, yeah. Now, so I was like, yeah, I'm not joining that. I'm done with it. Oh man, we're not. I'm gonna have to play guitar in this weather. I'm gonna get to it.